What if a single second could last forever? Not by miracle, but by design. In the forgotten village of Ashbrook Hollow, time has stopped, and something ancient is feeding off the stillness. Join Leah Moreau as she unravels the horrifying truth behind a man who broke reality to trap a moment, and the monstrous force waiting for time to move again. This isn't just a story, it's a ticking clock. Part 1. The Unmoving Man. I arrived in Ashbrook Hollow just after noon, though the light filtering through the trees told a different story. It was grey in that way that made you question whether the sun had ever risen at all. A sleepy, little village, nestled between hills too steep and symmetrical to be natural, like the valley had been pressed into the land by a giant's thumb. I parked outside a diner that had no name, only a swinging sign that squeaked in the wind. The silence greeted me first. Not the peace of a quiet town, but something stranger, stiller. Even the trees barely moved, as if the air was thick enough to hold them still. I stepped out of the car and looked at my watch. It said 12:04. I tapped the glass. It jumped forward to 12:08, Ashbrook Hollow. Population? Unclear. The census hadn't been updated in years, but I'd read the same story in a dozen forgotten newspapers. Hidden in the archives like someone wanted them lost. Ellis Granger, once a physicist, declared dead in 1965 after a lab accident. But here, in this town, people still swore he was alive, unaged, unchanged. I went to the general store first. An old man with cataract eyes sat behind the counter, hands folded on a newspaper from 2 weeks ago. He didn't look up until I said Ellis's name. He didn't ask how I knew. He only said, "You should leave before 3. I asked why. He didn't blink. Because after that, the day starts bleeding. I smiled, assuming he was just old and bitter, but I kept hearing it. From the woman sweeping her porch in a house that looked like it hadn't seen paint since the Cold War. From the boy who followed me down the street on his bike, never saying a word, just staring. From the waitress in the diner who poured me coffee before I ordered and asked if I'd seen him yet. Seen who? She just said, "He always knows when someone's coming." The town clock stood at the crossroads, tall and rusting. Its hands were still, frozen at 3:17. I stared at it for a long time. No ticking, no movement. Then I looked at my own watch again. 12:08. Still. It hadn't moved since I'd arrived. I visited the churchyard next. The gate creaked, but only once. After that, it was quiet again. The headstones were tilted and overgrown. Many of them belonged to people who died in the same week, April 1965. I ran my fingers across one stone. The name had been carved deeply, but someone had scratched through it with something sharp. Beneath the vandalism, I could just make out Granger. A child sat at the edge of the graveyard, legs dangling from a fallen tree. She was drawing on a torn paper bag with a red crayon. I asked what she was making. She held it up. It was a man. Long coat, black hat, no face. "Who is he?" I asked. She just said, "He lives in the still house. He watches from the upstairs window." And before I could ask anything else, she folded the picture into a perfect square and swallowed it. I stood in the middle of the churchyard and suddenly felt like I was being watched. Not the vague feeling you get in a dark room. Something sharper, precise, like a camera lens focusing on the back of your skull. So I turned, and there he was. Across the road, behind a rusted black iron gate, stood a man in a long coat, his hair silver but full, his face pale and calm, like marble left in the shade. He didn't move. He didn't even breathe, just stared, right at me, as if he'd been waiting. I crossed the street slowly. My steps felt louder than they should. Each footfall echoed like I was in a tunnel. I stopped at the gate. "Mr. Granger?" I asked. He didn't speak, didn't blink. His eyes were grey, but not the kind of grey that comes with age. No, These were the color of storm clouds held perfectly still, like a paused film frame of thunder. And in them, I swear I saw something flicker, not light, not reflection. Like the air itself was wrong around him, denser, warped. I reached for the latch, cold metal, unmoving. I looked back up. He was gone, not behind the trees, not into the house, just gone. Like a photograph burned in reverse. One moment present, the next never was. My watch ticked again, just once. I looked down. 17. I hadn't even blinked. I turned back toward town. The streets were empty now, deserted. Even the child was gone. The shadows stretched long, even though the sun still hadn't shown itself. I walked back toward my car. Every window I passed, every house, every shop had curtains just slightly parted, watching. I got in the car and shut the door. The radio turned on by itself. A man's voice, low, crackling, repeating a single phrase. Time is not broken, time is held. I turned the knob. Silence. But when I looked into the rearview mirror, he was there, standing in the middle of the road. Same coat, same stillness. Just watching, like he had all the time in the world. Part 2. The manor where time lies still. The gate to Granger Manor groaned open with surprising ease, like it hadn't rusted shut decades ago. The grass beyond it was overgrown, but trimmed just enough to seem intentional. The manor itself loomed above me, tall, narrow, built in that old Victorian style where every window feels like an eye and every corner seems to lean in just slightly, as if the house had been waiting. I stepped up the porch and reached for the doorknob. It turned before I touched it. The door creaked open by itself just a few inches. I stood there, heart pounding, then stepped inside. The air was cold, not just chilled, cold like a stone room hidden deep underground. But the strangest thing was the scent. It didn't smell like rot or mold or dust. It smelled like copper and lavender. Artificial, like someone had tried to perfume something terrible. The foyer was pristine, polished floors, an old chandelier, swaying ever so slightly without wind, not a speck of dust. And yet, the house felt hollow, like it had been preserved in formaldehyde. The ticking started slowly. I thought it was coming from one room, a grandfather clock maybe. But as I walked down the corridor, I realized it was everywhere. Every room I peeked into had clocks, dozens of them. Mantle clocks, wristwatches, cuckoos, pocket watches, some shattered, others perfectly preserved, but none of them ticking in unison. Many were still, others ticked backward. But the worst were the ones stuck at 3:17, some without hands, some with their faces turned inward, like they'd been folded back into themselves. I pulled out my phone to record it all, but the screen said 104, just like when I entered. I shrugged, probably just bad signal. Then I heard the laughter, soft, childlike, coming from somewhere upstairs. I followed the sound, though every part of me screamed not to. Each stair creaked just slightly, like the house was announcing my arrival. At the landing, the hallway stretched impossibly long, far longer than the outside of the house should have allowed. I opened the first door. It was a library. Floor to ceiling shelves crammed with old tomes, journals, and yellowed printouts. The air was thick with the scent of old ink. I ran my fingers along the spines. Titles I didn't recognize. Handwritten bindings. Notes in languages I didn't know, symbols that made my skin crawl. One journal was open on a desk, dated 1965. The handwriting started clean, crisp. Notes on time, memory, perception. Ellis Granger's thoughts on how the brain interprets sequence and duration. But then, the writing devolved. Words circled endlessly. Sentences bleeding into spirals, over and over again. Time is not a line, it is a throat. I turned the page. A diagram. Human eyes stitched shut, each iris replaced with a clock face. I snapped the journal shut. That's when I noticed the ticking had stopped. The house was silent now. I left the library, heart hammering, walked back down the hall, but something was wrong. The door at the end, the one I came through, wasn't there anymore. Just another hallway, now leading left instead of right. Another door I didn't remember seeing. I turned to go back to the library. Gone. The walls were shifting. I walked forward. There was no other choice. I reached another door, opened it. A child's bedroom. Faded wallpaper of stars and planets. A mobile hanging from the ceiling. The planets spinning slowly in reverse. A little girl's dress laid out on the bed, flat and untouched. And clocks, all 3:17. Everyone. On the floor sat a dollhouse, a perfect miniature of the manor. And inside that dollhouse, a tiny version of me, walking through the rooms. I backed out and slammed the door. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A single vibration. Checked it. Still, 104 still. I reached the end of the new hallway and entered a small room lined with mirrors. Some were whole. Others shattered. All of them warped, as though time had passed differently in the reflection. I stepped closer to one. A tall, cracked mirror with a jagged fracture down the center. And I saw him. Nathan, my fiancé, standing on the other side. His mouth moved, but there was no sound. He looked terrified, panicked. He pressed his hands against the glass, eyes wide with desperation. His mouth moved again. I pressed my own hands to the mirror. Nathan? But there was no reflection of me, just him. The lights flickered. The glass vibrated under my fingertips. I tried to speak again, but something shifted. The image blurred, as if the mirror were underwater. Then from behind me, a whisper, not in my ear, but inside my head. The second you love most is the one that breaks first. I spun around, no one there. I turned back to the mirror. It was empty. Just my own reflection now, pale, shaking, alone. I backed away from the mirror room, barely aware of where I was going. Every corridor looked the same. Every step echoed longer than it should have. Then the ticking started again, louder now. All around me, tick, 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 tick. I ran, found a staircase, stumbled down into the foyer. The chandelier still swayed, but the front door was gone. Just wall, seamless and smooth. I looked at my phone again. 4. Still. I whispered into the silence. What is this place? And the house answered me. Every clock struck at once. Every one. Each chime, a shriek, a cry, a warning. The air grew thick, the lights dimmed, and in the middle of the foyer, the air rippled, like heat but colder. And through it, for just a breath, I saw Ellis Granger, standing perfectly still, his hand outstretched, and behind him, Nathan again, held in place, like a photo pinned to a wall, frozen, mouth open, eyes pleading. Then the image shattered like glass, and I was alone again, except for the ticking. Always the ticking. Part 3, the looping hour. I woke up gasping. The motel ceiling stared back at me, water-stained and flickering with dim yellow light. My sheets were twisted around my legs like I'd been thrashing. My clothes still smelled like dust and old varnish. My boots were caked in the same mud I'd tracked from the grounds of Granger Manor, but I didn't remember leaving. The last thing I recalled was the clocks, all of them screaming in unison. Ellis, the mirror, Nathan, and now I was back here, in the motel bed, like none of it had happened. I sat up slowly and reached for my phone. 4. Still, hadn't moved since yesterday. My hand trembled as I reached for my recorder on the nightstand. I didn't remember turning it on, but it was running, the little red light blinking steadily. I hit play. Static. Then voices. Mine, and others, a woman whispering, "He doesn't let you leave the way you came in." Another voice, low and gruff, "The house remembers you. It doesn't forget." Then my own voice, distant and strained, "Who is the man in the mirror?" A pause. Then the answer, a whisper from someone I swear I'd never met. "That's not a man anymore. That's the second that broke." I dropped the recorder. My hands were shaking. I didn't remember any of those interviews, but my voice was there, and all the voices. They sounded afraid, not of Ellis, but of time itself. I couldn't stop myself. I had to go back. I drove without thinking, eyes glued to the trees that pressed in on both sides of the road like watching crowds. The town was even quieter than before, not deserted, just holding its breath. The diner was empty, the gas station dark, the general store boarded up, but the clock tower still stood, still stuck. 17. I parked outside the manor. The same windless air, the same copper and lavender scent, the gate still slightly ajar. I stepped through, and exactly as I crossed the threshold into the house, the grandfather clock struck, just once, the sound deeper than it should have been, like it came from beneath the floor or behind the walls. I looked at my watch. 17, the same as before, always. The foyer was the same, but different. The chandelier swayed harder, as if it had just been disturbed. And this time I didn't explore, I just walked. Forward, past the library, past the stairwell, and yet, I turned a corner and was back in the foyer. I turned again, same hallway, same door. I entered a room. It was a kitchen now. Not Victorian, but modern. Mine. The one Nathan and I used to cook in. But I'd never seen it here before. Not in this house. The calendar on the fridge read March 7th, the day we fought about my trip to Ashbrook. He hadn't wanted me to go. I stepped toward the counter, the same knife set, the same cracked mug he refused to throw out, and then a shadow passed behind me. I turned. No one. But in the reflection on the oven door, I saw him, Ellis, watching, silent, his eyes like deep wells that knew more than they should. I ran, out, the door. But it wasn't the hallway, it was my childhood bedroom. I was 6. The wallpaper had moons and stars. A toy chest sat at the foot of the bed. The curtains were still drawn the way Mom used to do every night, with perfect pleats. I heard a voice from behind the closet door, a familiar one. "Don't open it," it said. But I did. Inside was the mirror, the cracked one from the manor, and in it, again, Nathan, bleeding now, scratching at the inside of the glass, screaming soundlessly, and Ellis behind him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Time didn't move in the mirror. Nathan's scream hung open like a paused tape. I slammed the door shut, and now I was in the hallway again, running, trying door after door, but every room, every single one was a piece of my past. My 10th birthday, the hospital where I waited for news about my father, the college dorm where I told Nathan I loved him. Each memory more vivid than the last, but wrong, distorted, like someone had tried to recreate them from broken descriptions. In every one, a clock, stuck at 3:17, and always, somewhere, hidden in shadow, Ellis, watching. I stopped running, breathed deep and whispered, "What do you want from me?" And a dozen clocks answered, each one ticking again, louder, faster, overlapping, like a swarm of insects crawling inside my skull. I clutched my ears and staggered through another door. This time, it was the foyer, again, and at its center, the grandfather clock. Its pendulum hung frozen, tilted mid-swing, as if it had been caught between seconds. The air around it shimmered, not with heat, but with wrongness, I approached. My fingers brushed the wood. It was warm. Too warm. And beneath my feet, I heard something stirring, like gears the size of train engines turning slowly beneath the foundation of the house. The pendulum twitched, then stopped again. Behind me, the soft click of a shoe on tile turned. Ellis Granger stood at the top of the stairs, hands folded behind his back, expression unreadable. He opened his mouth, but the sound that came out wasn't words. It was a chorus of my own voice, overlapping, asking questions I hadn't asked, yet screaming answers I hadn't heard, begging for help I didn't remember needing. The chorus looped and looped and looped. The walls trembled, paint peeled backward, floorboards pulsed like living things. I screamed, ran for the door, but every door led back here, to the foyer, to the grandfather clock, to 317. I was trapped in the second that wouldn't end, the loop that refused to break. Time wasn't moving anymore, it was watching, and I was its favorite show. Part 4, The Man Behind the Moment. I didn't find the door, it found me. I was in the library again, or what used to be the library, and I brushed my hand across the old oak shelf, looking for a book that had never been there. Instead, the entire shelf groaned forward, just an inch, and behind it, stone stairs leading down into blackness, deeper than the foundation should have gone. I didn't hesitate. Each step felt longer than the last, like I was descending through more than space, like time itself was stretching. My phone was still stuck at 317, but down here it didn't even light up. No signal, no seconds, just cold, silent dark. At the bottom, the air changed. It wasn't just cold, it was stopped. Dust hung mid-air, suspended like strands of a frozen web. My own breath crystallized in front of me, forming clouds that didn't move, didn't fade. There were no lights, but I could see. The room pulsed, once, then again, and with each beat, a soft hum, like a heartbeat made of electricity. Then he stepped from the shadows. Ellis Granger, but not the man I'd seen watching me. No, this was something broken, bent forward with age, yet untouched by it. Hair white, but skin smooth. His voice came before his lips moved, a hollow, machine-like echo. "You found me, Miss Moreau." I stepped forward, heart hammering in my chest. "What is this place?" A pause, he said. A shelter from the avalanche, the single breath before the scream. His eyes, they weren't right. One was his, bright and blue. The other, glass. And behind it I could see something rotating. Gears, turning slow and deep, like a clock buried inside his skull. "I made this room," he continued, "because the moment had to be kept, locked, preserved." He turned and gestured behind him. I followed his gaze, and there it was, a machine, twisting towers of copper and obsidian. Tubes filled with a syrupy red liquid, wires spread like veins across the walls, glowing with soft blue light. In its center, a sphere, cracked and pulsing, surrounded by hundreds of small picture frames. I stepped closer, inside each frame. Memories. I saw Nathan, laughing on the beach, eyes squinting against the sun. My father, lifting me after I scraped my knee. A woman I'd never met, smiling beside a garden. Ellis walked beside me, slower now, almost reverent. "Every second I take powers the lock," he whispered. "Each moment remembered becomes one we lose. It is the price of holding time in place." I stared at him. "You're stealing people's lives." "I'm preserving them," he snapped. Then, gentler. "You don't understand what I saw, what was coming." He looked past me, not through me, but beyond me. Like the wall in front of him was a window, and something just beyond it still haunted him. "There was a moment," he said, "a perfect moment. My wife was alive. The town was still breathing, and something cracked. It came through, not death, not quite, but something worse. A collapse. time folded, like flesh torn wrong. I felt the walls tighten. The machine pulsed again. A picture on the edge of the array cracked in its frame. "My mind broke," he said, tapping the side of his skull. But my hands kept working. I built this to stop it, to keep the moment alive. And now, we're safe, mostly. I backed away, revolted. "You trapped an entire town." "I gave them peace," he said. "They're echoes," I said. "They're fading. They're ghosts." He smiled. "So are we." I turned toward the sphere. Nathan's image glowed at the center. "Let him go." "I can't," Ellis said. "He's your tether, your strongest memory, the one that powers your path. Back." My throat tightened. "You're feeding on him," I whispered. "No. I'm preserving the second where he still loves you." I raised my hand. Whether to strike him or the machine, I didn't know. But he stepped back. "Careful," he said. "Every beat of this device is tied to someone's thread. If you break it, time won't unfreeze. It will bleed." The lights flickered. Another pulse from the machine. Slower now. I looked around. The dust wasn't still anymore. It had begun to move, in reverse, rising from the floor, curling backward into shelves, into corners. Time was flexing, straining. Ellis stumbled, gripped the machine like a dying man clutching a life raft. "You don't know what's outside this moment," he hissed. "Ashbrook Hollow is gone, rotting, swallowed by forgetfulness. Out there, we're nothing. But in here, we are remembered." I looked down at the image of Nathan. His face shimmered in the glass, smiling, then frowning, then screaming. "These ye." Image blinked between memories, and I knew in that moment he wasn't trapped in a perfect second. He was burning through all of them, consuming every second of who he was to keep this place alive. I faced Ellis. "What happens if the machine stops?" He paused, and for the first time he looked afraid. "Then the moment ends," he said, "and the thing I stopped continues." Another pulse. The machine wheezed. Lights dimmed. I stepped toward the sphere, and for the first time, I heard Nathan's voice, muffled, as if through water. "Leah, please!" Ellis lunged. "No!" But his body was slow. Old. Stuck in half-time. I reached out, touched the glass. The image inside flickered, and I felt a rush of memories flood me. My first kiss. My mother brushing my hair. A moment at age 8 when I first saw snow. And then it stopped. Silence. Ellis collapsed to the floor, trembling, and the machine held still. One last beat, then none. The dust began to fall again. My breath formed and vanished. The basement was breathing, and the moment was ending. Part 5. Through the mirror darkly. After the machine stilled, after the pulse faded and Ellis collapsed into sobs too cracked and dry to sound human, I should have left. Any sane person would have. But time wasn't done with me. I felt it in the way the hallway outside the basement had changed. Narrower, like the walls had crept inward while we weren't looking. The wallpaper had peeled itself into unfamiliar patterns, spiraling inward toward a shape that looked like an eye. And the house, it breathed louder now, like it knew I was breaking things. I didn't know where I was going. My phone was a dead brick in my pocket. The lights in the manor flickered too fast to be real, and every hallway I took turned me in the wrong direction. Back to the library, or a stairwell that led to nowhere, or a window that showed only fog, until I found the door. It wasn't there before. A tall thing, wood-scorched black, handle cold enough to burn, and etched into the wood, "Silver remembers." I opened it. The air hissed out like breath from a corpse. Inside, a room made entirely of mirrors, floor to ceiling, endless. Each pane shaped differently, warped, cracked, rippling. some tall and thin like funhouse mirrors, others small, oval, fogged at the edges. No dust, no time, just reflection. I stepped inside and everything changed. My footsteps echoed 3 times too many. The door slammed behind me without touching it. And all at once, the mirrors came alive, each one lit up, each one showing something different. In one, Nathan was alive, sitting in our apartment, older now, holding a child I didn't recognize. He looked tired, but alive. In another, I saw myself. Maybe 10 years older, hardened, wearing a military jacket, blood on my hands, a gun in my lap. She stared at me like she knew I was watching. I backed away. Another mirror showed a version of me that wasn't human. Her eyes were black voids. Her mouth moved out of sync. Her hands were too long, fingers bending wrong, and in one pane, small and round like an old vanity, I saw Ellis. Not as I knew him now, half clockwork and decaying, but as he once was. Young, pale, hands shaking over blueprints, tears streaking down his face. He kept whispering, "I didn't mean to. I only wanted to hold it. Just for a moment. Just one." In another mirror, Ashbrook Hollow lay in ruins. Trees had split through roofs. Ivy strangled everything. A church bell, cracked in half, lay across the road like a fallen cross. There were no people, only crows and silence. And then, the voices started. Soft at first, like whispers behind glass, but building, layering, screaming over one another. "Help me. I don't belong here. Let me out. She sees us." I turned in a circle. Every mirror, every single one, had someone trapped. Inside, some were me, some were Nathan, some were strangers, pounding on the inside of the glass, their mouths wide with silent terror. I stepped back. My foot hit something. A small, handheld mirror had slid from the wall, almost like it had been offered to me. I knelt down and picked it up. At first, it just showed me, pale, terrified, lost. Then, the glass rippled, and I saw myself smile. Not the me holding it, the me inside it. A slow, deliberate smile. Then she tilted her head, and the eyes went wrong. Too wide, too black, too hungry. I dropped it. It didn't shatter. Nothing in this place could break. And then I understood. Ellis didn't trap time to protect the world. He trapped it because he was terrified of what came next. He froze the second before the fall. He locked us in the breath, before the scream, not to save us, but to delay the horror he saw coming, to run from it, to hide. But it was still here, in the glass, in the reflections, waiting. I turned back to the first mirror I saw, the one with me holding the child, and I whispered, "Is that real? Is that possible?" She looked up at me, the older me, and just nodded. Then her eyes widened in fear. She reached forward. She pointed. Behind me. I turned, and my own reflection wasn't there anymore. It had stepped out. It was standing beside me. Same face, same hair, same bloodshot eyes, but something wrong. It moved like it was remembering how to walk. Its eyes flicked toward mine and smiled. That same smile I saw in the handheld mirror. It raised one hand and pressed a finger to my lips and whispered, "Shh, I'm real now." I backed away, heart in my throat, breath shallow. It mimicked me step for step, but her feet didn't touch the ground. She left no fog on the glass. The mirrors behind her cracked, one by one. Crook, crook, crook. She moved closer. Whispers flooded the room. "She's out. She's not you. Run." The thing that looked like me reached forward, fingertips like frostbite, and touched my chest. Everything stopped. No breath, no sound, no time. Saw every version of myself die. Old age, fire, alone, loved, screaming, silent. 1,000 endings in one frozen instant. And then, the door behind me burst open. Ellis, his face torn, his voice a gurgle. "Not yet!" he screamed. He hurled something at her, a shard of the broken machine. It hit her like a bell tolling. The sound rippled, glass shattered, the reflection screamed and folded inward like a dying flame, collapsing into the floor like water down a drain. The mirrors cracked, shattered, exploded outward, and the whispers stopped. Ellis fell. So did I. And when I opened my eyes, the mirror room was gone. But time hadn't started again. Not yet. Part 6, the second that broke the world. The manor was no longer a house. It had become a wound, a gash torn open in the skin of time, pulsing and raw. The walls folded in on themselves, furniture floated mid-air, and the light, if you could call it that, came from nowhere and everywhere, flickering like a dying star. The hallway bent sideways, the floor melted into ceiling. My footsteps didn't echo. They predicted me, sounding before I moved. I followed the heartbeat, that same rhythmic thrum from before, slower now, labored, like the heart of something ancient, something breaking. And then I saw it, the core. It wasn't a room, it was a chamber, dug deep into the center of the manor, or beneath it, or around it. I couldn't tell anymore. The machine had grown, no longer just gears and wires. It was bone now, and sinew, and memory. Pulsing veins ran from it into the walls. Photographs spun like satellites around its central mass. Every face I'd ever loved stared back at me, frozen, blurred, trapped in the orbit of a moment too terrified to end. At the heart of it all, Ellis, or what was left of him. He stood fused into the machine, arms outstretched, his body stretched like wax, skin pierced by tubing that fed light and blood into the spinning core. His mouth moved, but the words came from the machine itself. A chorus, not a voice. "You made it back," they said. I stepped forward, trembling. "What is this?" I whispered. "The anchor," they said. "The moment, the second, the last one. Everything since has been an echo, and now you've seen it. You've touched the other side. You know what waits if this stops." The sphere at the far center of the core pulsed, and my fiancé's voice spilled from it. Nathan, soft and distant. Leah, please." I dropped to my knees. "He's alive." Ellis's face twitched. "He's remembered. His thread is strong. Strong, enough to bind you here. You love him. That is why this loop holds. But it frays, it weakens, it calls something else, and I heard it. Not Nathan. Something beneath him, a growl of thought, a pressure like the weight of a dying star. Not sound, a feeling crawling up the spine. Ancient, patient, and starving. "What is it?" I asked. Ellis lowered his head. His eyes were full of light and ruin, the thing that waits beyond the last second. It came before time. It hates that we moved. It wants us still. Unbeating, unbreathing, remembered, and rotting. The machine buckled. Sparks flew. Images of Ashbrook Hollow flickered around us. The town as it was, then buried in vines, then burning, then submerged. I saw myself, over and over, screaming, fading. Ellis turned to me, face stretched with pain. "You can keep it alive," he said. "Take my place. Feed the machine. It will love you. It will remember you. Forever." I looked up at the veins of memory. "The spinning ghosts, or," I asked. "Or you destroy it," he said. "Shatter the loop. Let the clock tick again. Let the thing finish what it started." I stepped forward, closer to the sphere. Inside it, I saw Nathan, my Nathan, reaching toward me, palm pressed against the glass. His mouth moved. "Leah, please. I want to come home." But behind him, a shadow. No shape, just intent. It opened eyes that weren't eyes. It saw me, and I felt myself unravel. A flood of every version of me dying, living, screaming, aging, giving in, going mad. And beneath it, one truth. This was never about saving time. It was about fearing the next second. Ellis didn't trap time to protect us. He trapped it to hide, to delay the inevitable, to cover the sun with mirrors and pretend night never fell. The machine whispered, "Choose." My fingers hovered over the core, glass smooth, warm with grief and history. Nathan called my name again, but this time I saw it. His voice was being used, looped, manipulated. He wasn't calling me, he was trapped. And with that, I knew. There was no saving anyone by staying still, only remembering them until they faded. I placed my palm against the glass. Whispers screamed in my ear. Every memory surged. My mother, Nathan. Laughter in summer. The first snowfall. A kiss in the rain. All of it begged me to stop, but I didn't. I pushed. The glass cracked. The machine shrieked. Ellis screamed. "No, you don't know what you're releasing," I whispered. Neither did you, and the world broke. The clock ticked. 18. Time moved. The chamber ripped open. The manor caved in. The mirrors shattered. Light and shadow flooded each other. The machine dissolved into a storm of screaming faces, spinning faster, faster. Then, silence. Silence so deep it felt holy. I awoke in a field. Grass warm beneath my fingers. Wind on my face. The manor was gone. Ashbrook Hollow. Gone. Just emptiness, green and silent, stretching to the horizon. A broken watch in my hand. Stuck at 3:17, but above me, the sun rose, and I swear, I heard a heartbeat. Not from a machine, but from the world, alive again. The second had passed, and whatever waits in the next one, I'll be ready. If time could break, would you even notice? Thank you for stepping into the stillness with us. If this story left a chill in your spine or questions echoing in your mind, there's more waiting just beyond the next click. Like, share, and subscribe to Haunted Echoes, where every tale drags you deeper into the dark. And if you're brave enough, explore our other horrors. Each one a door to something stranger. Because here, the stories never really end. They just wait.